Cradle, Dogs of Fount, Chapter 30, Part 1. Well, I'm sorry, Port, Chef Jack said, not looking particularly sorry. He sighed and said, when you left, you had to do what you had to do. Other people were waiting for that gig, and I didn't know if you'd be back. Not even weekends? Porter asked with some disbelief. Not even weekends. I made promises, Port. He laughed shortly. A-hole I may be, but I keep my word. It was gray and moody outside. It looked like rain, and Porter only had a flimsy windbreaker with no hood. He zipped it up and sulked down toward the bus stop on the corner of Kearney and Ruby. Thunder cracked in the sky somewhere far off, but Porter didn't pay it any mind. He wanted that computer in his room or basement, depending on Dad's stance, as soon as possible. He knew it was childish to be this impatient, but it was something so new and so cool. It was hard to conceptualize for the boy, but this could change his life, he hoped. Subconsciously, he noted that he hadn't thought too much about his mom since leaving Mike's house, but somewhere that the guilt was still there. Then as the ash gray bus pulled up, the idea of selling things popped into his head. He didn't have much, and what he had he either loved or needed. There wasn't much room for luxury in his household. He sat in the hard seat with the navy blue fabric and tried to memorize his stock of comics, old radios, sports cards. It was hard. If he really had anything valuable, it would have been gone by now. The bus sighed down the city streets, and Porter was vacant to the other passengers as he stared out the rattling window. Porter ran through the torrent that opened up while he was just yards away from his front door. Inside, he kicked off his loose Cujo sneakers and shook some of the rain out of his hair. School was out for 2 days for the second short summer break. In Dearden, school systems, they had named this one Farmer's Holiday in honor of the farming families of Fount. In his room, he went into the corner by his chest dresser and picked up his 2 file boxes of comic books. They were jam-packed, and some spilled out after he dropped the boxes on his spring mattress. He went through them all quickly and tried to see if any jumped out that might be worth something. The Blue Ninjas, Supermans, Feudal Warfares, Veda Gurus, all of them. In his best assessment, there were only about 5 that together would bring in 30 credits, tops. There was no way to tell for sure because the only comic valuation magazine, Best Books, he had was 1.5 years out of date. His bed was a mess of comics, but he was in no mood nor felt he had the time to clean it and stay sane. He swung open the folding closet doors and shoved a pile of old shoes aside to get to his box of old radios. There were wires coming from the top of the box, scratching the sides as he brought it to the foot of his bed. He clawed through them, looking for any that weren't completely bricked or severely damaged. They were all trash, Porter concluded. Of course, he could take it to any recycling center in Fount, and they'd probably give him 5 credits for everything in the box. Porter couldn't think of anything he could sell, and he was only at 35 credits, potentially. He placed the old box on the floor by the foot of his bed, and then sat there on the slope of the mattress. No, he would never ask Dad for the money now that they were a one-income family. Porter was pretty sure Dad applied and was receiving social service assistance, and he knew Dad probably hated it, but it might not have been that big of a handout because Stan had a job and fed himself, and up until now, Porter had his own stash. Whatever the case, Porter was going to have to come up with the money by himself. He hadn't been to the Sons of Fount Club in 5 days, but they took money. They never gave money, and if they did, it would come as meals or reading materials. He knew he'd had to show up there soon or they'd make a fuss about it. He didn't really find enjoyment thinking of them now. He stood up and paced to the closet and he saw it. The suit Dad bought him for his election. It had to be worth 80 credits at least. Then it was like being hit with a Charlie horse. It was or had been a happy and revealing time in his life. His parents were proud, and Porter was becoming less of a screw-up and just a winner. There was hope all around that time of the campaign and election. That suit was not just a suit, but a symbol of his parents' love for him, his mother's love for him. He stood there and stared at the suit on the hanger for moments, and then turned slowly and sat on the edge of his bed and looked out the window at the beating rain that sounded like deep gurgling laughter of some ghost. He'd been back to school for 3 days so far and still had no luck coming up with a solution for the money. He knew he could probably find another job, but working at the Yellowfin was ideal because of the tax shelter there for employees. Since it was a seafood restaurant with a permit to get fish from the ocean, the Parliament allowed such businesses to be tax exempt for the added cost of the whole process and cost of fishing.